Hello, friends. It is Sarah joined with Kuthumi. We are not confined by the limits of time and space. We cannot be confined by the limits of time and space and technology and whatever else to get this information out to you. So this will be going into the cloud. This will be going to our highest level patrons of the page. You guys keep everything running. Thank you so much. And this goes to the people who signed up to do the event. All 8 of you to do the small group events, and without you guys adding your energy and consciousness to it, there would be no presentation. So the Magi and the magic. We could also call this the being the undefined you in an undefined reality. Now, this is a lot of science. There's a lot of science in here. I never thought of myself as a science person. However, as my human personality has flaked off in a way to reveal the radiance, the eminence of my divine personality, I have found that I'm very, very good at science. And I asked Kuthumi, can we do this without science? And he said, but that's not really, so we realized that's not really the question. No, we can't do this without science because we can't do this without our biology. What we're describing here is the embodied Magi experience, the Merlin experience, the embodied consciousness experience, and that includes the biology. Now, some of you have this Atlantean design mind category thought that you're ditching your biology to stay on planet Earth. You are not. The biology integrates into the free energy vessel, creating the new human species. If you haven't taken the light body sessions, it's basically a 6-month program. It's a lot of content. It's hours and hours of content that we suggest you take over a 6-month period. So this is kind of an extension of that. However, the light body is not required for this course. What is required? A deep sensual inner life, right? A deep sensual inner life. A basic understanding of the Atlantean design mind and how it creates an external reality and an internal reality, right? So we're really going beyond anything I've experienced, and we're going, I mean, I've experienced all of this so I could bring it to you, but we're going beyond, we're really going beyond Crimson Circle. Most of you have come from that type of teaching, and we're really going beyond the limits of where it has dropped us off. Though, I'm sure they'll catch up with us. Wink. Yeah, a lot of this Adamus or Saint Germain has peppered throughout various key hawks, various shouts, various events. And so he's given us bits and pieces. And so I want to honor that, right? A lot of the talk about neurons and things like that. So, wow, here we go. Okay. So what we're really talking today about is about art meeting creation, right? Art is a way to express ourselves in a way that we're not being met in the world. It fills a gap in some ways for some people. It's a bridge for some people, but art can imitate life and life can imitate art. However, what is it when art meets our creation, when the painting comes alive, when the creator is in his or her creation, right? And we're also going to talk deeply today about the science of the sovereign mind. Maybe we didn't screw it up so bad in Atlantis with the headband. Maybe that we created potentials, possibilities, probabilities, and passageways, what Kuthumi and I call the 4 Ps, for the mind to become a sovereign experience. Right, so the name of this course, as we designed it, and it has taken, this was the seed, and it branched out into a beautiful tree with infinite branches and infinite leaves and infinite space between the leaves. We'll show you more. We call this knowingness in the sovereign mind. Sensuality meets experience, right? So the question, the self-inquiry question that Kuthumi asked of me and I asked of you is, what if the sensuality of your inner world appeared in your day-to-day life? Would more SRBs, self-realized beings, choose to stay on Earth if this was their experience? More so than realization or just about anything else, when Kuthumi and I feel into what conscious beings on Earth truly desire, many answer to have the divide lifted between inner sensuality and their day-to-day experience on Earth. When I was a eager beaver, Shambra, I went to an event called BON, B-O-N, and Adamus talked about the BON screen, right? So consciousness is the blank canvas in which reality is projected. The human, prior to realization, prior to having the awakening that it's so much more, it just focuses on the image projected onto the screen, right? And that deep inner dive that takes you into the self-realization experience is focusing on that black, blank canvas called consciousness, right? So prior to the awakening experience, you're focused only on the projected screen. In self-realization, in some ways, you're focused only on, not on the light projections, but on the black blank canvas of consciousness, answering the question, who am I? Right? So currently, physical reality is perceived mainly through the refractory light of the mind's narrow perceptions and or closed loop systems, right? So we're going to talk about the eyes, but it applies to sound, touch, taste, and the other human senses, right? So we see an image, it meets our retinas, the light meets our retinas, it flows through the brain mechanism, the biological brain mechanism, to the back of the brain, and it's filtered, right? And then how we think about the image we're seeing, the perception we have of it, the information travels back up. So it's kind of an antiquated system. There's an external reality that is projected through shadows and light. It meets the retinas, it goes through this experience and comes back out, right? So that's the way the majority of the world views externality, right? Science is catching up to with what we already know. It takes the human being, it takes the observer, it takes the perceptions of the observer for this external physical reality to exist. The physical external reality, including time and space, would not exist without the observer or the perceiver, right? So what we've had to do is to go beyond the mind to tap into our innate sensuality. If you look at anything, I went to the Rude Awakening documentary page today just to check in on it with Kuthumi. He wanted to look at it. It says going beyond the mind. When I went to the Threshold event with Crimson Circle, Adamus told me I was going beyond the mind, right? So we have to go beyond the mind to tap into our innate sensuality. But if you're going to namaste, I'm going to stay on Earth. If you're going to namaste on Earth, as Kuthumi and I call it, eventually the mind needs to come along for you to have the full Magi, sovereign mind, sovereign biology experience. So having to go beyond creates a divide between our rich inner world and the prescribed externality called Earth or mass consciousness or collective Shambra consciousness or collective spiritual consciousness or collective teacher consciousness. It doesn't, whatever you're involved in, right? And what Kuthumi and I are saying, they're both an illusion. The inner world is an illusion and the external world is an illusion, because all duality is an illusion. There's actually no divide between internal and external. As the Atlantean designed mind, which was created to have neutrally have an experience where you have a real full experience in a physical reality, in a standardized form, in your human avatar form, to interact with other humans in the same standardized form, to level the playing field, to have the experience, right? It was not a bad thing. Neutrality. The Atlantean design mind, eventually, if you stay here long enough, for me, I'm almost at 5 years, it's taken that long, the Atlantean design mind integrates into its natural state of omni-awareness. That severed part, we talked about this in other courses, so I'm not going to do it here. The part that severed us from Gnostic knowingness, the intelligence that exists without the constructs of time and space and physicality, unlike the Atlantean design mind. As the Atlantean design mind integrates into its natural state of omni-awareness, what happens is these light refractions, which create our external reality, produce multiple, malleable, fluid, and downright trippy at times realities in which we are the star of our own show. The caveat here is you cannot be the star of your own show until you've gone beyond identity. Human choosing self-realization would be an identity. This is my last lifetime, identity, right? Until the ego becomes the we-go. Until you find your you in an undefined state of being without losing the knowingness of who you truly are. I exist. I am that I am. I am that I am on earth and beyond it simultaneously. So that's the caveat. If you still have an identity that you're hanging on to, that you're trying to feed, this is not going to happen, right? So we'll get into the why and the how in this presentation. So as the Atlantean design mind integrates into its natural state of omni-awareness, the light refractions produce multiple, malleable, fluid, and downright trippy at times realities in which we are the star of our own show. The my being the God also, rather than a me pattern self. The divide between internal and external is lifted to allow life to flow unfiltered. The magic of the Magi, a creation of an entirely new relativity, entirely new real illusion, relative reality, a new earth called THEOS. Now, THEOS is not necessarily my thing, but Kuthumi, because I'm embodied here on earth. And everything's about really being on earth. If I'm going to be here, I might as well do it up, right? If I'm just going to sit around and not interact with earth, there's really no point in namasteing on it. I mean, I guess you could say you're helping the planet, but if you don't have any passion for helping the planet and you're just here out of obligation, there's no point, right? So Kuthumi talks about THEOS as an overlay. We're on the same rock, right? But our image projections on the rock begin to differ and commingle. They don't come together. New Earth and Old Earth don't come together, but they begin to commingle, one impacting the other and vice versa, creating a very malleable reality in which a Magi can interact. So we're really going beyond the Atlantean dream, way far beyond it. Right, so we're going to dive in, but before we do that, actually, we're going to go back here. I'm going to read you something Yogananda wrote. And we're going to cross that little bridge right there. Just imagine if you were living in this one room all of your life, having no contact with or knowledge of what is beyond these walls. You would say that this is the whole of your world. But if someone were to take you into the world outside, you would realize how infinitesimal your world was. That means, infinitesimal means how small and minute and minuscule the world you thought you lived in actually was. So it is with the perception of the Christ consciousness, energy and consciousness combined, new energy. So it is with the perception of Christ consciousness. The scope of mortal consciousness, by comparison, is like observing only the area of a tiny mustard seed to the exclusion of the rest of the cosmos. Christ consciousness is omnipresence. The Lord spread over every pore of infinite space and permeating every atom and subatomic particles as well, I will add. Yeah, so science is starting to catch up. Yogananda has a list of science that was catching up when he wrote this book called The Yoga of Jesus, which is very, very good. In the last 6 months, so much science has come out telling us what we as realized beings already know. I will say that self-realization is still like being in the closet. And you have to open the door of the realization closet to really, truly experience the universe of you, the infiniteness of self, right? And what happens while you're in the closet is that dragon clarity comes in and burns up all the belief boulders. Sensuality, going beyond the mind, allows you to experience something without the need to perceive it. So going beyond the mind allows you to tap into the sensuality of your I am that I am, your I am presence, right? So that allows you to begin to truly understand how to experience something, comprehend something without chopping it up through perceptions. Now, we're not getting rid of all our perceptions, but we're going to bring them back in to meet with sensuality. You don't need to perceive something in a certain way. You have the kaleidoscopic experience. All right, let's get into the science stuff, right? We really can't talk about being an embodied magus or magi, the magi being plural, without talking about the biology, right? So I want to talk about the father of neuroscience. He was not just a scientist. He was also a very well-known artist. His work is still being displayed in museums all across the world. Exhibitions are everywhere. He's headliner in the New York Times style section. He died in 1906. So the father of neuroscience, his name is Santiago Ramon y Cajal. And he produced the first clear evidence that the brain is composed of individual cells. These are called neurons. He discovered the neuron. He also discovered that these individual cells are fundamentally the same as those that make up the rest of the living world. No divide between internal and external. He believed that neurons served as storage units for mental impressions, such as thoughts and sensations, which combine to form our experience of being alive. He said, and he wrote in his journal, to know the brain is equivalent to ascertaining the material course of thought and will. Will is that which turns thought into energy. That's Yogananda's definition of will. Will is that which turns thought into energy, right? We use the term, instead of memories, we talk about things as energetic imprints. Instead of lifetimes, they're an energetic imprint, right? So if you're new to the term, I just want to introduce it right here because we're going to use it, right? Energetic imprints. The wall of fire is made up of energetic imprints. Paths you did take and didn't take. Lifetimes and unlifetimes. Every potential, possibility, probability, and passageway. All your energy. The wall of fire is all your energy. It is made up of energetic imprints. Mr. Señor Ramon E. Cajal said the highest ideal for a biologist is to clarify the enigma of self. I read this after I recorded our 5th light body session video called Living the Enigma. So I was really love to read this. I love when the synapses go, it's like little bubbles flying up in the air. He said the highest ideal for a biologist is to clarify the enigma of self. In the structure of neurons, right, these individual cells in the biological brain, in the structure of neurons, he thought he had found the home of consciousness itself. The credit here is, this is from a book that was just published. It's called The Brain in Search of Itself. And it's written by Benjamin Ehrlich, German guy. And it is available on Amazon and other places. So this is one of Mr. Señor Ramon y Cajal's drawings that are on display. I got this from the University of Cornell website. These are traveling, his artwork is traveling. So he was a scientist and an artist. This is a drawing of neural networks in the brain that he observed under a microscope. It looks an awful lot like the banyan tree, right? So this lovely father of neuroscience, he said that neurons, these individual cells, we could almost think of them as sovereign cells. These individual neurons, or these energetic imprints, these individual cells, to me, they each contain an energetic imprint. That's how I can access all my lifetimes. That's how I can access all potentials, possibilities, probabilities, and passageways while being in physical form, right? He said neurons were mysterious butterflies of the soul, whose beating of wings may one day reveal to us the secrets of the mind. And he also wrote, which I thought was interesting because I know a lot of artists, a lot of people here are painters. Only true artists are attracted to science. I just love that. So this is where he was really revolutionary. He felt, the father of neuroscience here, Santiago, our buddy Santiago, felt nerve cells ended freely and that they were distinct individuals. Each nerve cell was a neuron, was a distinct individual. He said the cerebral cortex, which is the makeup of this whole thing, was impenetrable and wild. He called it a terrifying jungle. But he said by force of will, which we'll just say is consciousness, by becoming aware, right? Will is something, and force have become like bad words, but we use them all the time in the back end. Maury used them a lot, right? Through will, right? And I want to say through divine will, because if you're doing this through human will, you're just trying to get all your neurons to reinforce an identity, right? So we have to go beyond identity. That's the caveat. None of this will work or make sense if you're still clinging on to an identity. All right. So by force of will, that which turns thought into energy, Cajal believed human beings can transform the tangled jungle of nerve cells into an orderly and delightful garden. Yogananda would say this is the science of God self-realization. This is the purpose of meditation. This is the purpose of Kriya Yoga. is to take this terrifying jungle, absolute chaos, mind's closed loop system, mind repeating thoughts, grabbing onto creating emotions that keep you stuck in the muck, all that stuff, the suffering of being human, the crystal prison of the mind. He thought, in the late 1800s, he thought this terrifying jungle, and this is through his studies and his art, the tangled jungle of nerve cells can turn into an orderly and delightful garden, actually compared to the Saint Germain Gardens in, I think, Paris, where it's so organized and beautiful. He also, at the end, right, introduces the idea of neuroplasticity, right? That it's starting to almost reaching full acceptance in a scientific community that new neurons can be produced, that neural pathways can change. This is like the open the box video that we did in the January or February satsang, I can't remember. You'll have to go back and check, right? So we're going from a closed loop system where things just repeating themselves, the ball's stuck in the box, to opening the box, the ball pops out, right? And this is neuroplasticity, the ability of neural networks in the brain to change through growth and reorganization from closed loop to open loop system. Development of new neural networks that aren't in either or, but are in the and, right? Individual neuron pathways making new connections. So one energetic imprint here in its individualized cell, making a connection in communion with another energetic imprint here, which creates a whole new reality for you to experience. For example, Kuthumi saying, open the box. Anytime you see a word that's written with the spaces in between, it's Kuthumi, beyond the Atlantean dream. Open the box. All right. So, continuing with the father of neuroscience and his beautiful artwork, his theory set out to describe how information flowed through the brain. Neurons were individual events or units or items that communicated to one another directionally, sending information from long appendages called axons. These are like the tree. I don't have my pointer. It's like the tree. These are the axons. To the branch-like dendrites over the gaps between them. So because of technological limitations, he couldn't see the gaps in his microscope, but he called them synapses. Synapses would be this beige area in between all the tree branches and the leaves and, all that stuff, right? So he called them synapses. And he said that if we think, learn, and form memories, we call them energetic imprints. If we think, learn, if we form energetic imprints in the brain, then that itty bitty space between all this, the beige part, was most likely the location where we do it, right? So this challenged the belief at the time that information was diffused in all directions over a mesh of neurons, right? Instead of, okay, so everything's moving through this mesh, right? Instead of like an individual cell lights up. You've all had that aha moment. That's a neuron in your mind lighting up saying, oh, I know this. I know that I know. When you say I am, then I am, this whole back cerebral cortex is going, okay, I am, then I am. I know that I know. It sends signals out to the entire body. Thank you, neurons, individualized cells. Each one sovereign, individualized sovereign cells. All right. So I'm going to give you some personal anecdotes. I'm going to start with Babaji in the semi-truck, go through the examples, and then I'll come back and do OLLIE in the hot pan. All right. So this is the closest copyright that I own image of Babaji that I can find. It's not exact, but I don't see him as old or wise even. He's just young and vibrant. So I was driving back from Mexico, right? Things have been happening leading up to this. I just kept seeing more and more cracks in the time-space continuum. I see them as little sparks, they're like little stars. It's like seeing a falling star. You catch it out of the corner of your eye and you go, oh, another falling star. Little cracks in the time-space continuum. So in Mexico, I was on a two-lane road. One lane of traffic going, let's say, north. One lane of traffic coming towards me going south, right? The way Mexicans drive is that turns into a 4-lane highway, even though there's only 2 lanes. So if there's a car going here, right, and it's going really slow, I'm going to pass it. I put my blinker on. I veer into the oncoming traffic and go around it. Normal for Mexican driving. Sometimes what happens is I'm going this way and this person's going this way and someone tries to pass here and I try to pass here, so we're using the same space to pass. I'm normally really, really good at it. But on this particular day, I'm going around, a truck and a huge semi-truck carrying barnyard animals and vegetables and everything else. I'm on farm roads. I go the back way. I like to go back in time and look at all of the farmland. And I see this truck's going around another car, and I'm coming here, so we're gonna collide, right? And then I see the lovely Mahavatar Babaji, who I talk to a lot. I don't talk a lot about him here, but it's part of where my experience comes from. He shows up, his face is there, just like you see here, not just, but similar to what you see here, and his face is there, right? And it's like, I'm in the hovering mode of the 4 Ps: potentials, possibilities, probabilities, and passageways. But I don't make a decision. I'm going to tell you how, why, and the science behind it. All right. So I'm going over everything I can possibly go over to tell you where it all comes from. This is a compilation. This is many months of doing. I'm a mad scientist. I have notes and papers everywhere. This comes from one of my favorite books, The Grand Biocentric Design, How Life Creates Reality. This guy, Robert Lanza, MD, he was one of the most influential people in Time magazine in the year 2014. He is a leading researcher on stem cell research. Like, instead of getting a knee replacement, you would get stem cells inserted into your kneecap and it would regrow itself, so you wouldn't have to have a major surgery. Sounds good to me, should I ever need a knee replacement. All right, so wave function collapse. Adamus talks about particles and waves, right? He's talked about it a lot. For those of you who come from Crimson Circle, we're really trying to move beyond our Crimson Circle background. It's always going to be there. We're always going to honor it. We're always going to appreciate it, right? But it's really finding my own space, and sharing with you that way. But for now, I'm just going to keep pulling that back in. That's why I do that. So there's a qualia reference point. There's a neural network that goes, okay, wave in the particle, got it, right? So wave function collapse. I'm going to explain this to you in terms, right? So I gave you a physical example, Babaji in the semi-truck. So the wave function is like, okay, so imagine all the multiple outcomes of this experience. There's so many possibilities. I get hit and I'm uninjured, but my car is totaled. I get hit, but I'm super injured. I have to go to the hospital. My car is totaled. The driver in the other car, he's in varying degrees of whatever, the animals in the truck, all of these different possibilities, probabilities, potentials, passageways, all of it, right? So the multiple outcomes hang in the air. until a wave function collapse. Now, this is literally a mathematical equation of all the different possibilities, right? Like if you were playing poker, how many different card options are there? So it's literally a mathematical equation. But eventually the wave function, which is all the p's hanging in the air, right, will collapse to produce a single perceived outcome, the end result, right? That's when the wave function collapses. Scientists have been trying to figure out why the wave function collapses. Why do things happen, right? What exactly pulls the trigger in a wave function collapse, right? The common idea right now is that the collapse is triggered by not me personally, but by the perception of the observer of one thing or another. I mean, if you're gonna go into like manifestation world, the law of attraction, the secret, you know, you manifest your reality. Someone who's like, everything in my life always sucks and blah, 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 you know, they're gonna get in the wreck so they can continue to complain about it because they actually really enjoy it. Right? This is law of attraction stuff. And if they're a super positive person and they're just really, really lucky all the time, then they'll make it out okay and they'll call their friends and say, yeah, I used the law of attraction and I made it out. All right. So here I am in this space, right? I'm watching this all unfold. So it's going quantum, right? But everything slows down and Babaji's there just smiling. And I'm smiling back at Babaji going, what? You know, but I don't have a desired outcome. I don't have an agenda. And I know some of you are going, yeah, right. No, because it's just not possible because I don't have an identity to reinforce. It's very hard to explain until it happens to you. But I'm asking you to just take my word for it, please. So I can't go in there to go, oh, I want to do this. And then, you know, so everything just hangs in the air. I literally see, not in my mind's eye, I literally see a crack in the time-space continuum and I shoot out the other side. And it's like, okay, that was interesting. But I was just looking at Babaji. I wasn't readjusting the steering wheel. I didn't even hit that. I think maybe I did like slow down, but the wave function did not collapse, is what I'm telling you. Right? For anybody else, it's like if you're in a relationship, does it work? Does it not work out? You're just stressed over all the potentials of everything. Eventually, the wave function collapses and produces a single perceived outcome. We broke up. Right? If I go back to the experience of Babaji in the semi-truck, in some ways, part of me did die and we went out of existence. And then we met a space where we're back in existence. Right? This is truly living a Magi experience. When people say, aren't you really scared to drive through Mexico? It's like, no, I'm not. Right? My baby dog, my Professor Ollie, died this week, and I keep getting these calls. Are you okay? I'm like, how are you doing? And it's like, there's no part of me that would allow myself, I'm allowing, right, to go into a place where I would hit grief and suffering. It's bizarre. There's a little tiny portion of my humanity that says, oh my God, we need to grieve this really hard in proportion to how much we loved him. And I've shed a few tears. And Ollie when he left the body, he immediately started showing me what he was doing outside of the body because death is an illusion. So it's like, it's really hard to explain. It makes me seem like a cold-hearted bitch, but I don't have... The emotional body also impacts this wave function collapse. If we have really high swinging emotions, right? My emotional body has integrated. I cried sensual tears when Ollie left physical form, but I don't think people can truly understand that you don't grieve something. In the last public video I shared, I said the roof could cave in and I would just deal with what's in my immediacy. It wouldn't be like the roof caved in and I did something wrong and, it's like nothing is personal. It's very hard to, everything is yours, but nothing is personal. No one did something to you. Ollie left his body in a beautiful way, and there's not one piece of me that can go into any kind of despair about that. I've given myself permission to do that. I've waited for it. It's like I have moments where I cry, but then it's light and I'm having a full-on conversation with the professor. By the way, he's doing the second video here. Believe it or not. Yeah, it's going to be really, really good. Right? So the wave function collapse. None of this is going to apply if you haven't integrated your mental body. I'm not talking about your biological brain, but your mental body that's been dragging you around and creating emotions and the storylines. I can't feel anything. I have no passion. Yada, yada, yada. Until you get past that and until this personality of the designated descendee lifetime flakes off, none of this is going to happen. This is not something you come out to meet. It's what slides in the back door through your personal experience. So what pulls the trigger in a wave function collapse, right? Where it's like we're going from all the P's to the function collapse makes the entire ensemble work together to produce a single perceived outcome. You see the outcome and I see the outcome, right? But if you hang out in the P's, there's no single perceived outcome. You're in the and, right? So what exactly pulls the trigger in a wave function? It's triggered by the perception. What has Kuthumi been telling us? Back away from the need to perceive. Back away from the need to perceive of one thing or another. This is me. The P's hang in the air until perceptions from a me or self-consciousness produce a single outcome. The collapse into a single experience depends on how the brain processes information. Right? So if you think the mind is an Atlantean designed prison trap, you're going to produce a single perceived outcome. If you're in your sovereign mind and biological autonomy, you're not reduced down to an insulting singular perceived outcome because you have backed away from the need to perceive. You went so far beyond the mind that it stretched and snapped into its sovereign place. Wave-particle duality. So things are either in science, they're either a wave function or a particle. You have two options, right? So this is just to explain the paradox of life through our friend Uncle Albert. You don't know who Uncle Albert is? He's Einstein, Uncle Albert Einstein, all right? So our dear Uncle Albert Einstein said, it seems as though we must use sometimes one theory, the wave function theory, while at other times we may use either the particle, the singular outcome, right? We are faced with a new kind of difficulty. We have two contradictory pictures, right? All the possibilities, one. This is, a scientist would get on here and argue with me and tell me I'm not explaining it right, but I'm explaining it to you in a way that will resonate with your individualized energetic imprint neurons and neural networks, right? So he says, Uncle Albert says we have two contradictory pictures of reality. Separately, neither of them fully explains the phenomena of light, which is how we're perceiving this relativity, how we perceive Earth and nature and other people, right? But together they do, right? So we talked about waves. Waves are the study of motion, right? For example, a gravitational wave made that pin drop, right? Gravity. Or how neurons communicate is through a chemical or an electric communication from one cell to another cell. They're not just communicating neurons between neurons, they're also communicating out to your muscles, right? So if you work out, it's good for your mental health, as in like not having dementia later in life, because it's keeping the brain active in ways that it wouldn't be if you just lived a sedentary life. All right, there's all these studies that show dance helps the neuroplasticity, for me not having like all the studies printed out right here. Right, a particle is a measurable, observable matter, right? Physicality. For example, you look in your microscope and you can see an electron or a proton or a neutron, which are subatomic particles that make up an atom, right? So there's an atomic particle, there's a subatomic particle. I'm just trying to give you some examples. Do you need to get all this? No, but Einstein is just saying there's a paradox, a seemingly dualistic experience that if you look at one or the other, a singular matter or a wave function, the motion, the possibilities, the probabilities, all of it combined in a very fluid function, a math equation, right? Then you could begin to make sense of this reality through the paradox. So, biocentrism is the concept that life creates reality, not the other way around, right? So, let's go to the second bullet point for those of you who are visual. So, even the people who created the framework of biocentrism know that matter is a real illusion. That's why they even put matter in quotes, because it's like, this physical matter wouldn't exist without the observer, without the human being observing it, and actually without animals observing it and the mineral kingdom observing it. We'll get into that in the second video, right? So biocentrism is it's like going from the world is flat, right, to understanding the world is round. All planets revolve around Earth, to all planets revolve around the sun. Heliocentric galaxy. Okay, so we're going through a revolution here. Kuthumi and I spend a lot of time in this. It's like another renaissance in science and art and understanding of how energy responds to consciousness, right? These people understand that matter is energy. Right? This is why you're here on Earth. These scientists incarnated on Earth to come at this beautiful experiential time of science catching up to consciousness, right? Shambhar are not the only people radiating their light. Get out of that closet, like Yogananda said, right? If you were living in this one room all your life, having no contact with what's beyond the walls, you would say this is your whole world, right? So it's like time for Shambhar to step out of the box, or whatever spiritual, whatever thing you came from, right? You start to realize that science is catching up with consciousness. These people incarnated on Earth to add their consciousness to these massive developments. I get new books are coming out. This just came out in paperback in November. The Father of Neuroscience book just came out this month. Everything's starting to go in that direction. This has huge implications for artificial intelligence as well, but I won't do that on this one. All right, so biocentrists, for example, realize that Earth, before it had any life on it, only existed in a probability state. Life creates reality and not the other way around. Most people, if you read a textbook, there's a universe that was created by a big bang, right? And time and space exist in this universe already, right? And then you have one little lifetime for a short while on it, and then you leave, and the universe exists independent of you. Time and space exist independent of you. Biocentrists know that time and space don't exist unless there's an observer, unless there's life to observe the passage of time and the physicality of space. Right? And not only do they know what we know, they have developed experiments to prove it, and they've made it into mainstream media. This is a popular book, right? It's not meta-science. It's not, this guy is not going to sell you a crystal or take you on a retreat with those music bowl things that are so annoying. It's like nails on a chalkboard. No, this guy is like in a laboratory. He's not giving a yoga retreat with meta-science. This is like legitimate stuff, right? It's not just woo-woo whatever and you get a free crystal at the end of the week. No, this is actual science is catching up. And even going forward, I would say. Getting past, they're really understanding that this biological form can truly begin to comprehend consciousness. And we don't have to bypass the mind. Right? So the other bullet point here was the behavior of subatomic particles are linked to the pretense of an observer. So energy responds to consciousness. Right? If you don't have, I'm not talking about they're talking about the observer likely from, I mean, in some ways from this singular human experience. I think this scientist knows that this is not a singular human experience, but he writes the book that way. So in our case here, for our intensive purposes, the observer is consciousness. You move from energy thinking it's in charge of things, human free will, to the divine will. And as the observer views energy, matter, particles, all of it, in response to the consciousness. Without the consciousness, none of it really exists. Time doesn't exist, space doesn't exist, particles don't exist, matter doesn't exist. This guy knows that, and he's not wearing crystals around his neck, I promise you. All right. So in all, Professor Sarah and Kuthumi here, we're talking about backing away from the need to perceive is essential for creative neutrality. Creative neutrality is not the wave function doesn't collapse. You just exist in the P's without producing a single perceived outcome unless you are set, you consciously, through divine will, create the singular perceived outcome. I think it'd be very rare that you would want to do that. And you'd need someone else to come and perceive your single outcome. All right, hanging out in the P's. Personal anecdotes. The other moment I had as this time-space continuum little shooting star experience began to happen is I was in the middle of cooking dinner like a mad scientist. I had like 6 pots going, and I had my dogs laying on the floor on my feet while I was cooking, and I had a hot top fly off, and it was flying in the air, and it was similar. It was hanging, all the peas were hanging, and eventually I knew the gravitational wave, the motion of gravity, was going to make the hot pot land. So I'm literally watching it all, and I'm not thinking, oh, I know, I did have a moment where it's like, can't get to it in time, it's just gonna land, right? And it's piping hot. The reason I dropped it is because I do this a lot. I touched it without a pot holder, because I don't have the program anymore where it's like, don't touch that, it's hot. I need to reprogram that back in. I got rid of so much programming, I don't have the don't touch that, it's hot. But I could see it all happening, and eventually the pan landed on the dog, but not heavy, and it didn't burn him, even though it was scalding hot and everything was fine. Moving through the time-space continuum. Fluidity. Can I teach you how to do this? No, I'm just telling you it's happening. It's just possible. Just possible to live like this all the time. Not just have one little moment that you tell everybody out over and over again and you use it to hang on to your knowingness. No, the Magi lives like this. Backing away from the need to perceive, which is Era of the Magus channel number 6, is essential for this creative neutrality. Now, I had Kuthumi define creative neutrality, and it's quite bizarre, but he said, this is what it is. All right. Right? So, I had an English teacher for a mother, so my vocabulary in English is very, very large. I realize not all of you have English as a first language, nor do you know giant English words. So first of all, I'm going to define these things. Superfluous is like extra information, like too much information almost. And extraneous is like unrelated information. You know, when someone starts telling you a story and they have a bunch of extraneous details that are not related to the story, and you're like, get to the point, it's not related, you know? So it's really interesting that he would add these words. So Kuthumi says, creative neutrality is the seemingly superfluous or extraneous non-substance substance. Good luck with that. Creating options never before considered in the relative reality creational experience. So we're going to go back, like, we're really in Newton and Einstein and all the other beautiful super conscious scientists that have led the way to help light up consciousness on planet Earth, right? Where it's like seemingly unrelated information, energetic imprints in the individualized neuron cells that are seemingly unrelated to an event light up, creating options never before considered, right? And so this is really like a deeper fizzy synapse firing inducing experience of either or to and, right? You know, Adam is saying don't make a decision for 6 months, right? So you can really see how creational neutrality works. That doesn't mean there won't be an impetus to act, right? It's just the action comes in a very neutral way without, you know, I can't stress to you enough. It's like without the emotional garbage, right? God, if Ollie had died, you know, 1 year into my realization, I would have been like, I can't stay. It would have been all about me. I can't stay on Earth. I lost my best friend. Like, is this happening to me? Right? But without the emotional baggage, you can actually experience grief fully. You can experience love fully, right? Without the emotional garbage created by these closed loop system thoughts. Good dog mom will grieve her dog for exactly 1 year and feel really shitty about everything, right? No. I can experience his death as beautiful and it be real, and I'm not like faking it to you guys, right? You know, if I had to leave a partner now, I would literally just pack my suitcase and take off. But after realization, my partner I broke up, I was in that mental and emotional, like heavy garbage. You can't see, you're not in creative neutrality if your identity, emotional body, mental body, the emotional body and the mental body are causal bodies. C-A-U-S-A-L, causal bodies. They're not in the biology, but they're like these overlays of the biology, right? So when you get real clear and sovereign, right, and your mind is an open loop system, and the neural networks have redesigned itself, and you know, you've got your biology that's integrating into the free energy body, creating the new human species, which we talk about in depth in the light body sessions, right? So, but these causal bodies also have to integrate somewhere along the way, right? And they're just kind of an overlay. If you talk to people, like my dad is in the near earth realms, and he's in the astral realms. It has a different, distinct layer of feeling. You know, they still have food there, but it's not the kind of food we eat here. They still have music. They have things related to Earth, but it's happening in a different way. And they have a form, but it's not a biological skin flesh form, right? So the way I feel into the mental and emotional bodies is they have similar quality, where they're like kind of in the physical world, but they don't have matter, right? But they still affect the matter, right? Like when I was grieving my dad's death, I had physical symptoms. My liver started to shut down, right? So all of these things are impacted. So this only happens when you get clear through allowing and mental body, emotional body, causal bodies integrate, right? And your identity has been chipped to bits, right? You cross the valley of alone and swam through the river of sadness, right? And now you're here, right? And I used to say, like, after I swam through the river of sadness, I'd find myself back on the shores of sadness. And then I'd be back in the river of sadness. And then I'd be back on the shore, right? And even with the most traumatic thing that could ever possibly happen, not being a trauma, the loss of my beautiful dog, who is so sweet and also will be helping me write the second video here. It's no longer a temptation to jump in the river of sadness or back into the valley of alone. Just, you realize you're not entitled to anything and that you're not in charge of anything. And instead of that being like, it's, right? It's like, whatever will be, will be. Que sera, sera, whatever will be, will be. But there's this, what is he? There's an imminent intelligence. Imminence is divinity, exuding divinity. There's an imminent intelligence that has a passion for I am than I am and expressing that. Experience and expression, right? The undefined you in an undefined reality. But the reality is you. I mean, each of these individualized cells, these neurons, these energetic imprints, it's the whole wall of fire is in your brain. And instead of that being chaos and torture, it's creational and free. We don't have to put it in a category. We don't have to reinforce an identity. Reinforcing an identity is the wave function collapse into a single perceived outcome. Wisdomize the single perceived outcome. Experience a single outcome, wisdomize it. Experience a single outcome, wisdomize it. Use it to reinforce your identity. I was an idiot, and now I'm wise. This is why you're here, right? To bring magic back to the world, right? So, non-duality, right? I know most of you aren't into that. Non-dual awareness is being aware of both outside and inside your body, me, self simultaneously. What Kuthumi and I want to do is talk about creative neutrality is the invisible glue that holds it all together. When you realize you're driving a car that's not really made of matter, it's made of matter, right? Real illusion. Everything is so loosely held together by this invisible glue. It's held together by the neurons that are perceiving it, both through thought, because thought ends up being a very useful tool here, and sensuality. It's all made up in the kaleidoscopic experience, where it's not like thought bad, sensuality good. I am caveman Shambra, thought bad, sensuality good. You know, car wreck bad. Avoiding car wreck, I'm a master. You know, we really those things are all lovely. We need to do those things. We need to have those steps. We're really getting, the Magi experience is really beginning to find the flow and the freedom of being the undefined you in the undefined reality. This has major implications for the environment, for you guys want to sit on a bench and radiate your light into a vortex of power, right? But you'll do more good looking into your inner Putin, into your where the places where there's still violence or aggression in the corners of your consciousness, right? So that rewrites the world. The way animals view the world through their biological body creates life. It creates potentials, possibilities, probabilities, and passageways for the earth for the environment to heal itself, right? And create ways. The ocean takes in 25% of carbon dioxide on this planet. It's not just trees who take the carbon dioxide and turn it into oxygen. The ocean does as well. The ocean's feeling into itself through the eyes of its marine life, turtles, dolphins, whatever else, to see, can it take in more of these greenhouse gases and produce more oxygen? Life begets life, right? So it's not just about you anymore, right? You really have gone beyond the me patterns. And to have this experience, it's essential, right? How do you do all that? You allow. You stop with the distractions. You stop with the selfies. You stop watching so much fucking TV, right? It's just, you sit with yourself. You do the self-inquiry, right? You tap into the future now self. You put yourself in life to experience it flowing through you unfiltered. All right. So that concludes our presentation today. This is my second run through. The first one was a little rough. Thank you for the 4 beings on my call, on the call today, for sitting through it. Just to give you kind of an idea of some of the stuff we're going to be doing is, so we're going to talk about relative reality and animal consciousness. I'm not saying animals are soul beings. Let's not get into that debate. But I'm saying how animals perceive their surroundings has an impact on the biodiversity and health of the planet. It's fascinating. Science, right? I always knew, Ollie was always observing everything all the time. He would just sit in a meditative state. I mean, he would lay in a river like this for hours, right? Always just observing. And I wondered what he was doing, right? And it's like, and there's all these scientific things that show this. The grand biocentric design is not just for human biology, right? And beyond all this, I'll tell you, having a sovereign mind and it working and experiencing each energetic imprint and lifetime in the neurons, it's all in there. And to have this biology work is so Atlantean dream and beyond. I can't stress it enough. Right? So just to give you a teaser for some of the stuff we're doing next is, this is from this book. It says, once we begin to take a look at animal consciousness, we find ourselves in an almost endless exploration of strange new worlds. Remember, reality exists relative. That's how we get the term relative reality. Reality exists relative to a particular observer. Animal consciousness, like human consciousness, involves the collapse of the wave function, right? And the unique physiological setups of other animals allow their choices, right? That the choice is what collapsed the wave function. Sometimes we use it. Other times something else happens. The life of the Magi. So, and the unique physiological setups of other animals allow their choices and wave function collapses to unfold along pathways that diverge from ours in wonderfully creative and useful ways. For example, a dog experiences most of its sensuality through its sense of smell. All right. I want to go over it like 10 more times, but I'm not going to do that. Feel into creative neutrality. Backing away from the need to perceive is essential for creative neutrality. Neutral is not boring. Neutral is where the passion comes in. Neutral is not a third category. Positive, negative, neutral. Good, bad, I don't care. No, neutrality encompasses all P's, right? And it's really, creative neutrality is the permeable membrane through which your Christ consciousness can shine through, your divine intelligence, your immanent intelligence. And clearing all this stuff up by going beyond it, allowing, stretch and snap back into place. Or some people get there through meditation. I doubt that's how you got there, right? Clearing all this up, we can really be the creators in our creation. Right? We go from the terrifying jungle to an orderly, and I'm talking about new energy, orderly and delightful garden. You know, and for those of you who really feel into that third to last Atlantean lifetime, or feel into that you participated in the headbands and put them on, you know, those of us who are in the back end of development, I've talked to a lot of people. This is happening simultaneously. There's an energetic imprint in your mind of that lifetime. In this design, they left potentials, possibilities, probabilities, and passageways for the sovereign mind. So you didn't do so bad after all. All right, I am love with you. Namaste on earth. We are Sarah and Kuthumi, and this is our Magi magic event, an undefined you and an undefined reality.